Hi, my name's Siope. I am a part of the Smarter Parenting team. Today I wanted to talk to you about something that I've seen quite a bit in working with families that have multiple children, and that is how to resolve conflict when the children are fighting amongst each other and blaming each other for things that you are unaware of or that you didn't see. So this bickering between siblings, a lot of times it happens where a child will come to a parent and say, well, he hit me, and then the parent is left to, consequent the one child for what is going on. That ends up being a very difficult thing because a parent has to make a judgment call about what is happening when they didn't see what happened, right? It's not easy. I mean, it's not easy. And it almost pits the parent into siding with one child over another child, which it may not be true. I mean, we don't know, right? And so there's the weird dynamic that happens. Does the child feel like, oh, they believe that child more than me? It didn't happen that way. What happened? And then parents are left to make that judgment call. It's hard. It's super hard. When I've worked with families that have dealt with this problem, almost universally, my suggestion to them is to set a consequence for both children. Now, it sounds super odd, right? And you want to consequent the child that is misbehaving. However, setting a consequence for both children, if they misbehave, teaches them that it doesn't favor either one of them to fight against the other one and to come to you and report it. It almost encourages them to work together and to get along. All right. Now you may be wondering, okay, well, what do I do then? I mean, what do I do if I see a child hitting the other child? Well, if you see it, then you can consequent it. And those are the terms that I use and the words that I use with parents. If you see it, you can consequent it because you've seen it, and then you can describe it. We have a skill on the Smarter Parenting website called Observe and Describe, and it tells you exactly how to do that. So jump to the website if you want, and you can learn how to do that. But if you can see something, then you can give a consequence for it. If you don't see it, then the consequence actually goes to both of the children. And they realize, okay, this isn't going to serve me to report, oh, he hit me. What I've noticed is that children tend to collaborate and work together because it's not in either one's best interest to be a tattletale and report on things that way, all right? Now, of course, there are some instances where you want your child to tell you if something is happening and that they want to be believed in those situations, and that's understandable. Now, you can do that by creating an open dialogue, but the bickering that happens between siblings, you definitely want to provide some type of consequence for the environment of what's happening. So, for example, I worked with a family with two boys. They were a year apart, and they were constantly fighting. We were on actually traveling to the store because we were going to practice a very specific skill that they were going to use at the store. And they were sitting in the back of the van, right? These two boys. And all of a sudden, I just hear one of them go, ow, ow, stop hitting me, stop hitting me. I turned around and I saw them actually sitting on opposite sides of the van. I mean, the other boy wasn't touching him at all. But one of the boys was complaining he was being hit. And the mom immediately just said, if you don't stop that right now, I'm going to... And, she was just flying off the handle. Right? She was just upset because she had it. She was tired of this. And little did she know that what I observed was that the boys were separated, but one was complaining that the other one was hitting him. Okay? In that situation, obviously, we talked before we practiced the skill that they were working on about her being able to separate, her making a judgment call on their misbehavior and actually consequenting that whole system for not getting along. They needed to learn to get along together. So she was able to do that, and she's like, okay, here's the rule. If you guys are arguing and fighting, okay, you can come to me and you can tell me, but there is a consequence for that, and that is that you two will have to do communication, right? They actually had to sit down and do reflective listening. You can find that also, it sounds like a shameless plug, you can find that also on the effective communication skill on the Smarter Parenting website. But she said, okay, if you guys struggle with that, you're going to sit across the table, you're going to do reflective listening exercises just so you can learn to communicate better, okay? And she did that for them, And she actually used it a couple of times, and then they realized, okay, that's not effective because neither one of us wants to do this, even though they were learning a very helpful skill that they would eventually use later on. So she found a consequence that worked for her child. You have to find one that works for your child. And again, it actually keeps the parent calm in a resourceful state when tantrums happen between siblings, because they don't have to fly off the handle, make judgment calls, and become overly emotional, about responding to what's happening right at the moment. It also sets a precedence for the children to work together and to realize it's not beneficial for us to argue or fight. It's not. So why do it, So there are some examples of where you would punish your child for misbehavior, when they come to report it to you with the constant sibling bickering with each other. And in those instances, you can determine who is telling the truth by separating the two and then getting the story. It's kind of like playing good cop, bad cop in a way. You're going to talk and get as much detail as you can from one, then you go to the other, get as much detail from the other, and then you're going to know that somewhere in between is the truth, okay? Because they're going to report what is in their best self-interest. And you can determine from there if one child needs to be consequented more than another. And again, this keeps a parent in a state of being overreacting emotional.
I have a question.
Okay. Yes. That's Rob.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I have a daughter, and sometimes she'll be honest and upfront about telling me what she did. Like, yeah, I hit her. How do I go about encouraging her to be honest while still punishing her?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So how do I encourage my child to continue to be honest and still provide a consequence for her behavior, right? So establishing a consequence beforehand is primary. You want to be sure you establish that. You do want to praise her, though, for being honest with you and encourage her to communicate. So one of the things that Smarter Parenting does very differently than a lot of other approaches to consequences is that we reduce consequences based on the child's ability to comply or change or be honest, okay? And by reducing the consequence, which sounds counterintuitive to a lot of parents, but by doing that, you're actually encouraging your child to continue that positive behavior while still providing them a consequence for the negative behavior. Because they do need a consequence. They do. And again, we're not looking to punish. We're looking to shape behavior over time. Okay? So you need to encourage that honesty part by praising her, but you also need to provide the consequence part by saying, okay, you can't do this anymore. This is not appropriate, and I do not approve. Okay? It's a fine balance between the two. But again, on the Smarter Parenting website, you can find all this information. Effective consequences is definitely one area that parents struggle with the most. So finding that balance is super helpful. All right? Did that answer your question? Okay. So again, for more tips and suggestions, you can visit the Smarter Parenting website to help you become a more effective parent with your children. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.